Footsteps in the corridor. Step into the darkness of St. Mercy Hospital, where Evelyn, Sarah, and Thomas confront a sinister force haunting its abandoned corridors. Follow their chilling journey as they unravel terrifying secrets and face relentless evil, determined to end the nightmare forever. Will they survive their final steps, or will the darkness claim them? Discover the truth in Footsteps in the Corridor. Chapter 1: Echoes of Abandonment. Evelyn Harrow shivered as the rusted iron gate screeched open, a painful shriek echoing into the heavy night. The wind hissed through twisted metal bars, whispering warnings she chose to ignore. St. Mercy Hospital stood ahead, a looming shadow against the cloud-shrouded moon, its cracked windows glaring like hollow eyes. She pulled her coat tighter, her footsteps crunching softly on gravel littered with glass shards and fallen leaves. Evelyn had promised herself never to return here after Thomas's disappearance, but the message left on her voicemail last night was unmistakable. His trembling voice, distorted and desperate, had uttered only 2 words: "Come quickly." Her heart pounded, each beat amplifying the anxiety crawling under her skin. Evelyn ascended the stone steps, each one creaking ominously beneath her weight. She pushed open the heavy wooden door, the hinges groaning, reluctant to release their long-held secrets. A thick, musty scent of decay overwhelmed her, memories flooding back, memories she had long suppressed. Inside, darkness enveloped her, broken only by thin slivers of moonlight penetrating through cracks in boarded-up windows. Evelyn clicked her flashlight on, its beam slicing through the gloom, revealing peeling paint and mildew-covered walls. She hesitated, then stepped forward into the oppressive silence. Almost instantly, she froze. From deep within the darkness came a faint but unmistakable sound, slow, deliberate footsteps echoing softly, rhythmically down the unseen corridor. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat, her pulse quickening. "Thomas?" she whispered, her voice trembling, barely audible. The footsteps stopped abruptly, replaced by the silence of a tomb. "Thomas, is that you?" Evelyn called again, louder this time, her voice cracking slightly with fear. Only the empty silence replied, mocking her uncertainty. Swallowing hard, she pushed deeper into the corridor, her flashlight casting elongated shadows along the crumbling walls. She moved cautiously, every creak of her shoes amplified by the stillness. As she turned a corner, a sudden metallic clang startled her, echoing harshly through the halls. Evelyn spun around, her heart racing wildly. The flashlight beam quivered in her shaking hand, illuminating nothing but emptiness behind her. Taking a shaky breath, she pressed onward. Ahead, the corridor branched into 2 paths. She hesitated, uncertainty gripping her chest tightly. From the right corridor, a chilling sound drifted toward her. A soft, agonized sob, barely audible, yet deeply haunting. Her skin prickled as a cold breeze brushed past her, whispering indistinct words into her ears, too soft to decipher, yet terrifying enough to send chills down her spine. Drawn by a force she couldn't explain, Evelyn moved slowly toward the sound. The sobbing grew louder, now punctuated by the occasional whimper echoing eerily through the abandoned halls. Her flashlight trembled as she aimed it ahead, illuminating a door partially ajar, marked with faded numbers, 306. She approached cautiously, her breaths shallow, her heart drumming frantically within her chest. Reaching out, she pushed the door open, its hinges whining loudly in protest. The room was empty, save for an old rust-stained hospital bed and shattered medical instruments scattered across the filthy floor. Evelyn stepped inside. Confusion clouding her thoughts, the sobbing had ceased abruptly, replaced by deafening silence. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her, an explosive bang reverberating throughout the room. She spun around, her flashlight flickering wildly. Panic surged through her veins as she frantically grasped the door handle, shaking it desperately. It wouldn't budge. "Help!" she screamed, pounding her fists against the heavy wooden door. Her screams bounced back, swallowed by the walls around her. Tears of frustration blurred her vision as she slumped against the cold surface. Then, from behind her, the footsteps returned, slow and measured, echoing clearly inside the sealed room. Evelyn turned, her back pressed against the door, her chest heaving. The flashlight beam wavered across the room, but nothing stirred. Yet the footsteps continued approaching closer, louder, until they seemed right beside her. She felt a presence, invisible yet tangible, hovering inches from her face. Her skin crawled as a whisper breathed into her ear, cold as ice. "You shouldn't have come." A scream tore from Evelyn's throat, primal and raw, as she clawed at the door in desperation. Finally, it burst open, throwing her forward into the corridor, sprawling onto the filthy tile floor, gasping. She scrambled to her feet, flashlight swinging erratically as she fled. She ran blindly, her breaths ragged, heart pounding painfully. Behind her, relentless, the footsteps pursued, matching her pace perfectly, tormenting her with their calm precision. Evelyn's eyes blurred with tears of terror as she stumbled through the halls, corridors blurring together. Finally, she reached the entry hall and bolted toward the exit, bursting through the doors into the bitter night air. Only then did the footsteps cease. Evelyn collapsed onto her knees on the cold ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Her breath misting in frantic clouds before her. She looked back at the hospital, its dark windows now watching her mockingly. She knew she had no choice. Thomas was still in there somewhere. Gritting her teeth, she stood shakily, wiping tears from her cheeks. She would return, stronger, prepared. She had to uncover the truth hidden within St. Mercy Hospital's walls. As Evelyn stumbled away into the darkness, back inside the hospital, unseen eyes watched her departure. Footsteps echoed once more down the empty corridor, slowly retreating, fading into the chilling silence, patiently awaiting her inevitable return. Chapter 2: The Midnight Visitor. Evelyn awoke abruptly, gasping for air, sweat slick on her forehead, her heart still echoing the terror of her dreams. She sat upright, staring into the pitch-black room of her small apartment. The digital clock on her nightstand glowed softly, displaying the haunting digits. 12 o'clock a.m. Midnight. She rubbed her eyes, shaking off remnants of her nightmare. The visions of Sate. Mercy Hospital and the echoes of footsteps still lingered vividly, tormenting her even in sleep. Exhausted, yet unable to return to rest, Evelyn swung her feet onto the cold wooden floor. ... Her breathing slowed as the familiar surroundings of her bedroom calmed her racing heart. As she stood, stretching sore muscles, a sudden, sharp knocking echoed through the apartment. Startling her back into alertness, she froze, her breath catching. Who could possibly be knocking at this hour? Another knock, louder, urgent, came from the front door. Evelyn reached for the robe hanging by her bedside, pulling it around herself protectively. She moved silently. Her footsteps muffled by the carpet as she approached the door cautiously. "Who is it?" she called nervously, her voice barely steady enough to mask her fear. Silence. Then a voice whispered through the thin crack beneath the door, chillingly familiar yet distorted. "Let me in, Evelyn." Her pulse quickened, blood turning to ice. She recognized the voice instantly, even through the distortion. Thomas. Trembling, she turned the latch and slowly opened the door, half expecting an apparition. The hallway was empty. Evelyn's eyes darted left and right, scanning the darkness. Nothing. "Thomas," she whispered into the shadows, her voice quivering. A sudden, loud crash erupted from inside her apartment, causing Evelyn to whirl around in terror. The sound of glass shattering reverberated through the silence. She raced back inside, slamming and locking the door behind her, heart pounding violently. "Who's there?" she shouted, her voice cracking. Silence enveloped her once again, oppressive and heavy. Evelyn cautiously stepped into her living room, her eyes adjusting to the dim light from a street lamp filtering through the curtains. Her breath caught at the sight of shattered glass scattered across the floor. The framed photograph of her and Thomas lay broken, its face down. A slow creaking sound echoed from deeper within her apartment, the unmistakable noise of a door slowly swinging open. Evelyn's skin prickled with dread. Someone or something was inside. Her breaths quickened, chest tight with panic. She reached for the nearest object, a heavy metal lamp, and moved carefully toward the sound, each step deliberate and quiet. The creaking stopped, replaced by a chilling silence. Evelyn straying to hear any hint of movement, her body taut with tension. Suddenly, from the depths of her apartment came a low, guttural laugh, a sound filled with malice and dark amusement. "Who's there?" Evelyn shouted again, voice rising in desperation. Another laugh, louder this time, echoing mockingly around her. Evelyn moved instinctively toward the sound, pushing open the bedroom door with trembling hands. The room appeared empty, moonlight softly illuminating the space through partially drawn curtains. Yet the cold presence she felt was unmistakable. Suddenly, the closet door creaked open slowly, deliberately, and Evelyn gasped sharply. Her grip tightened on the lamp, her knuckles white. From within the shadows, two glowing, malevolent eyes stared back at her. Evelyn screamed, a shrill, desperate cry that pierced the oppressive silence. The shadowy figure emerged slowly, tall and looming, a shape barely human. Its laughter echoed once more, filling Evelyn's mind with dread. "Thomas is waiting," the figure hissed, its voice dripping with sinister intent. "He needs you." "Stay away!" Evelyn shrieked, swinging the lamp wildly toward the figure. The metal base connected with nothing but air, causing her to stumble forward, crashing to the floor. The figure dissolved into darkness, its laughter fading into the walls. Evelyn lay shaking, sobbing quietly, overwhelmed by fear and confusion. She knew she was not alone. Something from St. Mercy Hospital had followed her home. Pulling herself up, Evelyn staggered to her phone, dialing the number of the only person she trusted, her friend Sarah. As the call connected, Evelyn spoke quickly, desperation evident in her voice. "Sarah, please come over. I can't be alone tonight." Sarah arrived within minutes, concern etched clearly on her face. Evelyn recounted her terrifying encounter, each word trembling with lingering dread. Sarah listened intently, worry deepening in her eyes. "You shouldn't have gone there, Evelyn," Sarah whispered softly, her voice trembling. "St. Mercy isn't just an abandoned hospital. It's cursed. Whatever's inside won't stop until it gets what it wants." Evelyn met her friend's gaze, determination growing through her fear. "Then we have to end this, Sarah. I need to find Thomas. I can't let whatever's in that hospital keep tormenting us." Sarah nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of their situation. "I'll help you, Evelyn, whatever it takes." Outside, unnoticed by either woman, the dark figure stood silently beneath the shadowed street lamp, eyes gleaming. Watching Evelyn's apartment, a chilling smile spread slowly across its shadowy face, satisfied by the chaos and fear it had sown. With a low, malicious chuckle, it turned away, disappearing into the shadows. The night was young, and its game had just begun. Chapter 3, Room 306. Early morning sunlight filtered weakly through thick clouds as Evelyn parked her car outside St. Mercy Hospital, her stomach twisting into knots of anxiety. The events of the previous night still haunted her, echoing vividly in her mind. Sarah sat silently beside her, pale and quiet, her hands gripping the seat tightly. "You sure about this, Evelyn?" Sarah asked softly, her voice uncertain yet supportive. "We don't have a choice." Evelyn responded firmly, masking her own fear. "Thomas is still in there. Whatever's happening, it's tied to room 306. I need answers." They stepped out into the chilly morning air, the gravel crunching beneath their feet, the wind rustling through the skeletal branches overhead with a mournful whisper. The hospital loomed ahead, a dark shadow even in daylight. Evelyn led the way, heart hammering with every step toward the forbidding structure. As they entered through the heavy doors, an oppressive silence swallowed them, instantly suffocating. The air was cold, dense with decay, each breath tasting of mildew and forgotten despair. Their footsteps echoed loudly, disrupting the unsettling quiet. Evelyn directed the flashlight down the corridor, its narrow beam slicing through shadows and illuminating peeling wallpaper and cracked tiles. The silence was suddenly shattered by a distant, high-pitched creak. Evelyn froze, feeling the blood drain from her face. "It's starting again," Sarah whispered, gripping Evelyn's arm tightly. Evelyn nodded grimly, stepping forward slowly, drawn deeper into the darkness by an unseen force. They navigated cautiously through the corridors, each corner turning into another endless maze of shadows. The creaking grew louder, more insistent, echoing ominously around them. Finally, they reached room 306. The door hung slightly ajar, swinging slowly back and forth with a haunting groan. Evelyn reached out, her hand trembling as she pushed it open wider. The room inside lay exactly as she remembered, stark, cold, and empty. Yet something felt different. As they stepped inside, the temperature dropped sharply, their breath instantly visible in misty clouds. Evelyn shivered violently, her flashlight flickering erratically. The door slammed shut behind them with brutal force, the crash resonating harshly throughout the room. Sarah gasped, stumbling backward into Evelyn. "What's happening?" she cried, panic rising. Before Evelyn could respond, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed across the floor, slow and deliberate, circling them. Her flashlight swung wildly, illuminating nothing but empty air. A sudden, piercing scream filled the room, high, tortured, agonized. Sarah covered her ears, eyes wide with terror. Evelyn felt her heart seize as the scream morphed into a series of wails, cries of pain and anguish that tore through her very soul. "Stop!" Evelyn shouted desperately, spinning around, searching for the source. "Please stop!" Abruptly, the scream ceased, replaced by deafening silence. The footsteps halted, replaced by an icy whisper that slithered through the darkness. "You want to find him?" it hissed softly, cruelly amused. "He is here, waiting." A soft sobbing echoed from the far corner, drawing Evelyn's attention. The flashlight beam revealed a shadowy figure huddled against the wall. Evelyn rushed forward instinctively. "Thomas?" she called softly, hope surging despite her dread. The figure raised its head, revealing pale skin marred by dark. Sunken eyes devoid of humanity. It smiled grotesquely, exposing sharp, rotten teeth. Evelyn recoiled, horror filling her veins. "No," it rasped mockingly. "But I know where he is. Do you really want to find him, Evelyn?" Sarah tugged urgently at Evelyn's arm. "Don't listen to it, Evelyn. It's trying to trick us." Ignoring Sarah, Evelyn stepped closer, determination hardening her voice. "Tell me, where is Thomas?" The creature chuckled darkly, rising slowly, its bones cracking grotesquely. It pointed one twisted, skeletal finger toward the wall behind them, its laughter echoing menacingly. Evelyn turned, noticing a hidden door partially obscured by peeling wallpaper. She hurried to it, tearing away the layers, revealing rusted hinges and an old-fashioned lock. Without hesitation, she tugged at the handle, and the door swung open with a bone-chilling screech. A dark, narrow staircase descended into the gloom beneath the hospital. Evelyn felt compelled forward, her heart pounding, every instinct screaming for her to turn back. "Evelyn, wait!" Sarah called urgently, rushing after her. They descended slowly, their breathing heavy, flashlights barely piercing the thick shadows. At the bottom, a small, damp room opened up before them, illuminated faintly by a single flickering bulb. On the far wall, another door marked with strange, ancient symbols stood ominously silent. Before they could approach, the heavy door slowly swung open, creaking loudly, revealing absolute darkness within. From the void, a voice called weakly, heartbreakingly familiar. "Evelyn, please help me." Evelyn's heart leapt painfully. "Thomas?" she whispered, stepping forward eagerly. From behind, the sinister laughter of the creature in room 306 echoed down the stairway. "He's waiting for you, Evelyn, waiting in the dark." Swallowing her terror, Evelyn gathered her courage and stepped into the shadowy doorway, Sarah following closely behind. As the darkness engulfed them, the door slammed shut, leaving only silence and the soft, chilling whisper echoing around them. "You can't escape now." Chapter 4. Whispers in the Dark. The darkness pressed against Evelyn and Sarah like a physical force, thick and suffocating. Their flashlight beams barely penetrated the blackness, flickering sporadically, as if being drained by some unseen entity. Evelyn's heart thundered violently, every breath a struggle against the oppressive air. "Thomas?" Evelyn called softly into the abyss, her voice trembling with both hope and fear. Silence returned her call. A silence far deeper than any she had known. Unnatural, absolute. Suddenly, the silence was fractured by a whisper, low and insidious, slithering into her ears. "He's waiting. Come closer," it crooned, the voice echoing subtly, chillingly from all directions. "Did you hear that?" Evelyn whispered urgently to Sarah, whose face had paled dramatically in the weak flashlight beam. Sarah nodded slowly, unable to speak, her eyes wide with terror. The whispers intensified, becoming clearer, their sinister tone weaving in and out of clarity. Each word sent chills down Evelyn's spine, prickling her skin with icy dread. "You shouldn't have come. He's ours now. You won't save him." Evelyn steeled herself, shaking her head as if to dispel the horrifying voices. "No," she hissed defiantly, stepping further into the darkness, driven by desperation and resolve. Sarah followed reluctantly, her grip tightening on Evelyn's arm. The whispers shifted abruptly, turning into a distorted, agonized groan, pain-filled and chillingly familiar. "Evelyn," it cried out, twisting her heart painfully. "Help me." "Thomas," Evelyn shouted, her voice cracking with panic. She surged forward blindly, flashlight swinging wildly, casting frantic shadows along the narrow passage. Her foot struck something solid, and she stumbled, falling hard onto cold stone. Sarah knelt quickly beside her. "Are you all right?" she asked, voice trembling. Evelyn nodded shakily, scrambling to her feet. "We're close," she whispered fiercely, determination overriding her fear. Ahead, the corridor opened into a wide, cavernous chamber. Ancient medical equipment lay scattered around, rusted and decaying. In the center stood a rust-covered operating table, illuminated dimly by the remnants of their flickering flashlights. Evelyn felt an immediate, sickening dread as she approached cautiously. "Evelyn! Sarah!" The whisper came again, this time clearer, unmistakably Thomas. His voice was filled with anguish, echoing hauntingly through the room. "Thomas, where are you?" Evelyn screamed desperately, spinning in frantic circles. "Here, I'm here," the voice whimpered weakly. Sarah's flashlight landed on a dark corner, illuminating a figure hunched against the wall. Evelyn rushed forward, heart pounding fiercely. As she reached him, Thomas raised his head, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered brokenly, clutching at her desperately. "It's too late." Before Evelyn could react, the room erupted into deafening chaos. Harsh, shrill laughter filled the air, echoing off every surface. Shadows twisted grotesquely around them, the whispers morphing into horrifying screams. "Too late! Too late!" the voices screeched, relentlessly tormenting them. Sarah screamed in panic, covering her ears against the cacophony. Evelyn held Thomas close, her mind racing wildly for an escape. The shadows closed in tighter, forming shapes twisted, tortured faces, their eyes filled with malice and hunger. "Run!" Thomas shouted, forcing himself onto shaky legs. "Get out now!" They sprinted toward the corridor, the whispers transforming into enraged shrieks, following them relentlessly, clawing at their sanity. The corridor seemed endless, stretching impossibly, trapping them within a nightmare of disorientation. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, Evelyn spotted the faint glow of the stairway ahead. With a final, desperate surge, they burst through the door and stumbled into the dimly lit basement room. The heavy door slammed shut behind them, instantly silencing the horrors they'd just faced. They collapsed onto the damp ground, gasping raggedly. "We can't stay here," Sarah whispered urgently, glancing fearfully around. "It won't let us leave." Evelyn looked at Thomas, who lay shaking beside her, eyes filled with trauma. "Thomas, what happened to you?" They took me," Thomas stammered, his voice filled with agony. "I've seen things, Evelyn, horrible things." "Who are they?" Evelyn pressed, desperation tightening her voice. Thomas met her gaze, eyes haunted. "The forgotten ones. They died here, Evelyn, but their souls remain. Trapped, angry. They want others to suffer as they did." A chilling wind whispered around them, carrying a sinister voice. "You can't escape." Sarah shivered violently, tears streaming down her cheeks. "What do we do?" Evelyn rose determinedly, her voice firm despite her fear. "We fight. We're not letting this place take us. Not without a fight." Gathering what remained of their courage, they stood together, prepared to face the nightmare head on. But the darkness around them stirred once more, whispering cruel promises of suffering and despair, patiently waiting for their final reckoning. Chapter 5: The Forgotten Patient. The air was heavy, saturated with despair and ancient misery as Evelyn, Sarah, and Thomas climbed cautiously from the basement room back toward the upper levels of St. Mercy Hospital. Evelyn's heartbeat resonated loudly in her ears, matching the rhythmic creak of the stairs beneath their hesitant footsteps. Thomas moved unsteadily, leaning heavily on Evelyn, each step a visible struggle. "We need to find a way out. But first, we need answers," Evelyn whispered determinedly, her eyes sharp despite exhaustion. "There must be something about this place, something that explains what we saw." "The records," Thomas murmured weakly. "There's an old records room upstairs. It's hidden, but it's there." Sarah nodded, swallowing hard. "Let's find it quickly." They navigated the darkened corridors carefully, flashlight beams trembling over peeling paint and shattered glass. Their breaths clouded visibly in the unnatural cold, every step echoing ominously. Evelyn's nerves tightened as she strained to detect any sound of approaching danger. Eventually, Thomas gestured toward a seemingly ordinary wall. Evelyn approached cautiously, pushing gently until the hidden panel shifted, revealing a narrow passage. They squeezed through, the air inside stale with forgotten secrets. The room was small, cramped with dusty shelves filled with yellowed files and faded patient records. Evelyn quickly began sifting through the brittle pages, her heart quickening as fragments of horrifying truths emerged. Patient after patient had suffered unexplained fates, disappearances, accidents, mysterious deaths, all documented meticulously, yet marked only by cold indifference. A sudden rustle echoed softly from the far corner, freezing Evelyn in place. Her flashlight revealed nothing but shadows, yet the sound persisted, subtle scratching, accompanied by faint, labored breathing. "Who's there?" Sarah demanded, shakily, stepping protectively closer to Evelyn and Thomas. A whispered moan drifted out from the darkness, filled with unspeakable agony. Evelyn moved forward cautiously, heart racing, flashlight trembling. The beam landed upon a figure curled weakly on the floor, a frail, ghostly man, emaciated, dressed in tattered hospital garments. "Please, help me," the man croaked weakly, his voice barely audible. "They forgot me here." Evelyn knelt quickly beside him, horrified by his condition. "Who are you?" The man lifted his head slowly, revealing gaunt features and hollow eyes, deeply haunted. "Jacob," he whispered faintly. "Jacob Ellis. They left me here to die." Evelyn's breath caught painfully, realizing this man had been trapped for decades, his suffering unending. "We'll help you, Jacob," she said gently, determined to offer some comfort. He shook his head weakly, tears glistening in his hollow eyes. "Too late for me, but not for you. Escape while you can." "They're coming!" As if summoned by his warning, the distant sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, slow, deliberate, menacing. Sarah's eyes widened in terror. "We have to move now!" Evelyn turned desperately back to Jacob. "Come with us," she pleaded. He smiled sadly, shaking his head again. "My place is here. I'm bound to this nightmare. But you must go. Warn others. Expose the truth." Reluctantly, Evelyn rose, pulling Thomas and Sarah toward the exit. "I promise, Jacob. We'll end this." As they slipped back into the corridor, Jacob's pained whispers followed them, a haunting farewell, swallowed quickly by approaching footsteps. Their pace quickened, fear driving them through winding hallways toward the hospital entrance. Yet the hospital itself seemed to resist their escape, corridors shifting subtly, paths obscured by shadows and illusion. Panic surged through Evelyn as whispers again filled the darkness, cold and mocking. "Leaving so soon?" They stumbled forward, each turn more disorienting than the last. Evelyn's heart sank with dread as she recognized the chilling laughter growing louder behind them, the entity closing in, relentless in its pursuit. "We won't make it!" Thomas gasped weakly, stumbling beside her. "We have to!" Evelyn urged desperately, determination blazing fiercely within her. Finally, ahead loomed the battered main doors. Evelyn reached forward desperately, but just as her fingers brushed the handle, it slammed shut violently, barring their escape. Evelyn pounded frantically, screaming in frustration. From behind, the shadows coalesced into tangible shapes, dark figures emerging with glowing eyes, faces contorted in eternal agony. At their forefront stood the terrifying figure, Evelyn recognized from room 306, its grotesque smile wide and mocking. "You can't leave us," it hissed cruelly, eyes glittering with malice. "You belong here now." Evelyn faced the entity bravely, stepping protectively before Thomas and Sarah. "We will leave!" she shouted defiantly, her voice echoing boldly through the haunted halls. "Your torment ends here." The entity's laughter filled the corridor, cold and sinister. "Your bravery is admirable, but futile." As darkness surged forward, Evelyn clung fiercely to hope, her resolve unwavering even as terror closed in, whispering threats of eternal suffering. Her mind raced desperately, knowing their only hope lay hidden somewhere in the forgotten stories of those who had suffered before, like Jacob. And in the depths of her fear, Evelyn knew their fight was far from over. Chapter 6: Shadows of the Operating Theater. The darkness receded slightly as Evelyn, Sarah, and Thomas hurried away from the sealed main doors, driven deeper into the heart of St. Mercy Hospital. Every corridor seemed alive, shifting subtly, herding them toward an unknown, sinister destination. Evelyn's flashlight trembled, barely illuminating their surroundings. Thomas's breath came in ragged gasps, each step visibly exhausting him further. "Where are we going?" Sarah asked desperately, her voice shaking. "Somewhere we can hide," Evelyn replied urgently. "Anywhere that isn't here." As they moved further, the hallway opened abruptly into a cavernous space filled with ghostly outlines of old surgical equipment. A rusted sign above the doorway read, "Operating Theater." Evelyn hesitated, dread pooling sharply in her stomach. A faint scent of antiseptic and decay permeated the air, thickening the atmosphere. "We don't have a choice," Thomas muttered weakly. "It might buy us some time." Stepping inside, Evelyn felt an immediate oppressive chill, far colder than the corridors outside. Their flashlight beams danced erratically, casting monstrous shadows on grimy walls. Ancient, rust-covered surgical instruments lay scattered, their edges dull but still menacing. The sudden metallic clang of a surgical tray echoed harshly, making all three jump in alarm. Evelyn aimed her flashlight towards the sound, heart thudding painfully, revealing only empty darkness. Another clang reverberated, followed by the rhythmic drip of water, or something thicker falling onto a metal surface. "Who's there?" Evelyn called shakily, her voice barely above a whisper. From the far corner, shadows seemed to move, twisting unnaturally. A voice whispered, guttural and menacing, "You came willingly. Now you will see." The operating lights above them flickered to life, dim yet harshly illuminating the center of the room. Evelyn gasped sharply as she saw a blood-stained operating table appear, fresh blood pooling impossibly across its surface. A surgical instrument dropped to the floor, echoing loudly. Sarah covered her mouth in horror as Thomas stumbled backward, eyes wide with trauma. Evelyn stood frozen, transfixed by the terrifying vision unfolding before them. Figures materialized around a table, ghostly surgeons, their movements jerky and distorted, faceless beneath blood-splattered masks. "Prepare the patient," a distorted, hollow voice commanded. A heart-wrenching scream filled the air, echoing painfully off the tiled walls. Evelyn recoiled, recognizing Jacob's voice, filled with unimaginable agony. His ghostly form appeared strapped to the operating table, eyes wide with terror, silently pleading for mercy. "No!" Evelyn shouted desperately, stepping forward instinctively. The ghostly surgeons turned toward her, their faceless masks eerily blank, yet somehow menacingly aware. "Do you wish to join him?" The lead surgeon intoned coldly, raising a bloodied scalpel. "Leave her alone!" Thomas cried weakly, staggering to Evelyn's side, mustering his remaining strength. The figures laughed mockingly, the sound echoing painfully through Evelyn's mind, tearing at her sanity. "You're all already ours," another surgeon rasped maliciously. "Your souls will suffer eternally." Shadows surged forward, gripping at Evelyn, Thomas, and Sarah, icy fingers clawing cruelly at their flesh. Evelyn screamed as pain seared through her limbs, the cold touch of death wrapping around her heart. "Fight it!" Evelyn gasped desperately, rallying her fading strength. "They're not real!" Thomas and Sarah struggled beside her, their screams mingling in a chorus of defiance and terror. Evelyn's vision blurred, darkness consuming her senses. Yet beneath the terror, a spark of anger ignited a fierce refusal to surrender. "We will not join you!" Evelyn shouted fiercely, summoning every ounce of courage within her. Her voice resonated powerfully through the room, momentarily dispersing the shadows. The surgeons hissed angrily, their forms flickering and wavering, losing solidity. Evelyn stepped forward defiantly, her resolve strengthening. "You feed on fear, but we won't give you that power." Behind her, Thomas and Sarah echoed her determination, their voices growing stronger, louder. The shadows recoiled further, shrieking in rage as their forms began dissolving into the darkness from which they'd emerged. Finally, the operating theater plunged back into darkness, the spectral surgeons vanishing with a final haunting scream. Evelyn collapsed weakly, gasping for breath. Sarah and Thomas joined her, trembling yet alive. "It's not over," Evelyn whispered grimly, knowing the fight had only begun. From deep within the hospital, a sinister voice whispered softly, filled with cruel promise, "We are eternal, you cannot escape." Gathering themselves, Evelyn knew their only chance was to confront the heart of Saint. Mercy's horrors. They had to discover its dark secrets and end this nightmare once and for all. Rising shakily, Evelyn turned to her friends. "We face this together. It ends tonight." As they moved carefully forward, the shadows around them stirred subtly, watching, waiting patiently for their final encounter. Chapter 7. The Nurse's Tale. Evelyn, Sarah, and Thomas cautiously made their way through the winding hallways, guided only by flickering beams of weak flashlight light. Each step resonated eerily, creating unsettling echoes throughout the abandoned hospital. The oppressive silence felt unnatural, almost alive, observing their every move. As they passed yet another darkened corridor, Evelyn halted suddenly, catching her breath sharply. Ahead stood a frail silhouette bathed in pale moonlight, filtering through a cracked window. Evelyn raised her flashlight cautiously, illuminating an elderly woman dressed in an outdated nurse's uniform, her eyes distant, haunted. "Who are you?" Evelyn called softly, her voice tense. The nurse slowly turned toward them, her hollow gaze distant yet strangely lucid. "I've waited for someone to come," she whispered, her voice soft, trembling with suppressed emotion. "Someone brave enough to uncover the truth." "Who are you?" Thomas repeated carefully, his weakened voice strained with effort. "My name is Margaret," she responded quietly, a slight tremble in her voice. "I worked here long before it closed." "You stayed behind?" Sarah questioned, confusion mingling with fear. "I couldn't leave," Margaret whispered bitterly. "I watched so many suffer, so many die. Their souls trapped here, tortured endlessly. I tried to help, but the darkness was stronger." Evelyn approached cautiously, feeling the genuine sorrow and regret in Margaret's words. "What happened here?" she asked gently. Margaret's gaze darkened further, shadows deepening in her eyes. "We were promised miracles. New treatments. But it was all a lie. Patients became experiments, trapped between life and death. When they died, their souls remained, tormented and vengeful." Suddenly, a distant, chilling scream echoed from somewhere deep within the hospital, freezing them in place. Margaret visibly shuddered, eyes wide with terror. "They know I'm talking," Margaret gasped urgently. "Listen closely. To end this nightmare, you must find and destroy the records hidden in the director's office. It's the source of their power, their anchor to this world." A loud bang reverberated from down the hallway, shaking the walls around them. Margaret grabbed Evelyn's arm tightly, her eyes desperate. "Hurry! They won't let me speak much longer. Go now!" "Come with us," Evelyn pleaded. Margaret shook her head sadly. "I'm bound here, forever haunted by my failures. But you can set us free. Please, promise me." "We promise," Evelyn vowed solemnly, determination lighting her eyes. Margaret offered a faint, grateful smile. Then, with a sudden cry of pain, she vanished into thin air, leaving only a chilling whisper. "They're coming!" An agonized scream erupted around them, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of slow, menacing footsteps approaching rapidly. "Run!" Evelyn shouted urgently. Pulling Thomas and Sarah into motion, they sprinted down the corridors, chased by the echoing footsteps and the harsh, cruel laughter of the unseen entities. Doors slammed violently shut behind them, each sound punctuated by the desperate wails and sobs of tortured souls. Finally, they reached a large set of ornate double doors marked Director's Office, partially hidden beneath years of accumulated dust and decay. Evelyn pushed desperately against them, feeling resistance, the malevolent forces fighting to hold them back. "Help me!" she shouted, straining fiercely. Sarah and Thomas joined her, throwing their weight against the doors. With a loud, splintering crack, the doors burst open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with ancient filing cabinets, stacks of papers, and books scattered chaotically across a large desk. Evelyn quickly searched through the documents, heart racing, desperation mounting. "It has to be here," she whispered frantically. Thomas, leaning heavily on the desk, pointed weakly. "Over there, the cabinet." She rushed over, pulling drawers open hastily. Finally, her trembling hands closed around a thick folder marked with cryptic symbols. She felt an immediate surge of revulsion, sensing the darkness radiating from the pages. The room temperature plummeted dramatically as shadows gathered around them, voices hissing furiously, screaming threats of vengeance. Evelyn resisted the overwhelming dread, her resolve unwavering. "Destroy it!" Sarah screamed, her voice nearly drowned out by the cacophony. Without hesitation, Evelyn lit a match and ignited the records, throwing them onto the desk. Flames erupted instantly, casting eerie, flickering shadows around the room. The screams intensified to deafening levels, filled with rage and anguish. As the flames consumed the cursed documents, the darkness began to recede, replaced by a powerful, cleansing light emanating from within the fire itself. A final scream echoed hauntingly, then abruptly ceased. Silence descended heavily, the oppressive weight lifted. Evelyn, Sarah, and Thomas exchanged exhausted, hopeful glances, realizing the nightmare might finally be ending. "Margaret," Evelyn whispered gratefully, "she helped us end it." Thomas nodded weakly, relief evident despite his pain. Her story saved us all. Yet as they stepped away from the office, Evelyn knew deep in her heart that the fight wasn't quite over. Somewhere, hidden within the shadows, a final reckoning awaited. But now, empowered by Margaret's courage and sacrifice, they were ready to face whatever awaited them next. Chapter 8: Hallways of Madness. Evelyn, Sarah, and Thomas emerged from the director's office, breathing heavily, hearts still racing from their harrowing encounter. Though the oppressive shadows had receded momentarily, an unsettling feeling lingered, as though the hospital itself were merely catching its breath, preparing to strike again. "We can't stop now," Evelyn said firmly, gripping her flashlight tightly. "We must find our way out." Thomas leaned against the wall, visibly weakened but determined. The sooner, the better. Together, they navigated the hospital's labyrinthine halls, each turn revealing more dark, endless corridors stretching infinitely ahead. The layout felt different, twisted, malevolently rearranged to confound them. A sudden, distant giggle echoed through the halls, chillingly innocent yet deeply sinister. Evelyn's skin prickled in fear, her pulse quickening. Sarah moved closer, eyes wide with dread. "Did you hear that?" Another giggle, closer this time, resonated mockingly through the corridor, accompanied by rapid footsteps, small and playful, yet somehow terrifying. "Stay close," Evelyn whispered urgently, her flashlight trembling. So they moved cautiously forward, their every step echoing oddly, distorted as if mocking their anxiety. Around them, the walls seemed to shift subtly, bending inward, pressing closer, amplifying their mounting panic. "It's getting narrower," Thomas murmured breathlessly, alarm rising sharply in his voice. The giggles multiplied suddenly, bouncing from every direction, enveloping them in a maddening chorus of childlike laughter. Evelyn swung her flashlight wildly, catching fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures darting just out of sight, their forms small yet impossibly fast. "Leave us alone," Evelyn shouted defiantly, her voice cracky with fear and frustration. The laughter transformed abruptly into harsh, derisive cackles, mocking and cruel, ringing painfully loud in their ears. The walls pressed even closer, forcing the trio to squeeze together tightly, each breath becoming a labored gasp. "They're playing with us," Sarah sobbed hysterically, her composure unraveling. "We have to escape." Suddenly, Evelyn's flashlight flickered and died, plunging them into absolute darkness. Panic surged through her veins, paralyzing her momentarily. "No, no, no," she whispered desperately, tapping the device frantically. Dot, dot, dot. From the darkness came whispers low, insidious, taunting, seeping maliciously into their minds. "Lost, forgotten, abandoned, you'll never leave." "Ignore them," Thomas urged weakly, his voice quivering with strain. "They want to break us." A sudden, ear-splitting scream tore through the corridor, piercingly sharp, echoing with torment. Evelyn felt the scream slice through her very soul, nearly collapsing under its weight. Thomas and Sarah cried out, their voices joining the scream involuntarily, caught in its contagious terror. "Hold on!" Evelyn shouted desperately, fighting against the encroaching madness. She forced herself forward, blindly groping the walls, searching frantically for an exit or even a simple doorway. The walls around them vibrated violently, pulsing as if alive, resonating with deranged laughter and anguished cries. Faces appeared within the walls, twisted, distorted visages, frozen in eternal torment, mouths open in silent, haunting screams. "We won't let you trap us!" Evelyn screamed fiercely, channeling every remaining ounce of strength. Just as hope seemed to vanish entirely, a faint glimmer appeared ahead, a thin sliver of moonlight seeping through a crack in the wall. Evelyn surged forward desperately, clawing at the wall until a hidden door creaked open painfully, revealing a narrow passage. "This way! Hurry!" Evelyn shouted urgently, pushing Sarah and Thomas through. As they scrambled into the new corridor, the hidden door slammed shut violently behind them, muffling the terrible sounds instantly. For a brief moment, they leaned against the wall, gasping, trying to regain their composure. Yet Evelyn knew the respite wouldn't last. St. Mercy Hospital's horrors would soon return, relentless and merciless. They had to escape before it was too late. ... "Stay strong," she whispered firmly to Sarah and Thomas, determination burning fiercely in her eyes. "We're going to make it. We have to." They nodded weakly, drawing courage from Evelyn's resolve, preparing themselves for whatever lay ahead as they stepped into yet another shadowed corridor, ready to confront the madness once more. Chapter 9. Unseen Footprints. Evelyn, Sarah, and Thomas moved cautiously through the dim corridor, the unsettling silence a sharp contrast to the chaos they'd just escaped. Their hearts thudded painfully in their chests, nerves frayed from the relentless horrors they'd endured. Evelyn felt every muscle scream with exhaustion, but determination kept her moving forward. "We must be close to an exit," she whispered, though her voice wavered slightly with uncertainty. Thomas leaned heavily on Evelyn, his breathing labored. "It feels like we've been walking forever." Sarah glanced nervously behind them. "It's too quiet." "Something doesn't feel right." As if summoned by her words, a faint, soft noise echoed from somewhere behind a rhythmic, almost delicate sound, barely audible, but distinctly unsettling. Footsteps. Evelyn froze, every hair on her body standing on end. "Did you hear that?" she breathed, barely audible. Sarah nodded shakily, eyes wide with terror. "It's starting again." The footsteps continued, slow and steady, growing louder with each passing second. They were impossibly soft, yet carried an unmistakable threat. Evelyn turned, scanning the darkness, but saw nothing. The corridor remained empty, shadows undisturbed. "We have to keep moving," Evelyn urged quietly, gently pulling Thomas forward. They quickened their pace, each step filled with dread, but the footsteps followed relentlessly. Evelyn glanced down, her flashlight beam trembling, illuminating the floor behind them. Her breath caught, sharply visible in the thin layer of dust, were footprints, distinct, yet devoid of any physical form. "Look," she whispered, voice trembling. "Footprints, with no one there." Thomas stared in horror, strength visibly fading. "They're playing with us." The footsteps increased in speed, their invisible pursuer drawing closer, its presence oppressively tangible. A chilling breath whispered near Evelyn's ear, cold and vile. "You can't run forever." She gasped sharply, spinning around frantically, but saw nothing. Yet the footprints continued, closer now, taunting their every step. "Keep moving!" Evelyn shouted desperately, panic surging. They sprinted through the corridor, hearts racing, breath ragged, chased relentlessly by the invisible menace. Doors slammed violently shut beside them. Walls groaned with a malevolent creak. Shadows twisted into mocking shapes. Every sound intensified their terror. Every second felt like an eternity. A sudden guttural growl filled the corridor, resonating deeply through the walls, vibrating beneath their feet. Evelyn stumbled, nearly collapsing as raw fear overwhelmed her senses. Thomas and Sarah caught her, steadying her quickly. "Don't give in," Thomas whispered fiercely, his eyes filled with determined defiance despite his physical weakness. Gathering their courage once more, they surged forward, finally reaching a large, heavy door marked "Emergency Exit." Evelyn grasped the handle frantically, shaking it desperately, but it wouldn't budge. "It's locked!" she screamed in frustration. The invisible footsteps slowed to a sinister, deliberate pace, moving steadily toward them. Evelyn pounded furiously on the door, panic threatening to consume her. Sarah turned desperately, eyes darting wildly until she spotted a small emergency fire axe mounted on the wall nearby. "There!" she cried, lunging toward it. She smashed the glass casing, seizing the axe and swinging it with frantic, adrenaline-fueled strength at the door. Wood splintered, metal screeched. Each strike echoing harshly, masking the terrifying approach of their unseen stalker. "Hurry!" Thomas shouted urgently, glancing fearfully at the advancing footprints. Sarah slung fiercely, finally breaking the lock. The door burst open violently, flooding them with cold, fresh air. They surged outside, stumbling onto the hospital grounds, gasping desperately for breath. As Evelyn looked back, her heart froze. Standing just inside the door, a ghostly silhouette stared back at them, eyes burning with malevolent fury. Slowly, silently, it dissolved back into shadows, leaving only the faint, chilling echo of unseen footsteps. "It's not over," Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible above her pounding heart. Yet as she turned toward the open grounds, determination ignited once more. Faye had escaped for now, but Evelyn knew their fight had not ended. The unseen footprints would follow, waiting patiently for their next move. Chapter 10, Final Steps. Evelyn, Sarah, and Thomas stood breathlessly beneath the open night sky, the chill wind slicing through their trembling bodies. They had escaped the hospital, yet the oppressive darkness lingered, its malevolent presence palpable even in the open air. "We can't stop now," Evelyn said resolutely, her voice steeled with determination despite her exhaustion. "The hospital won't rest. We have to put an end to it, once and for all." Thomas nodded weakly, supported heavily by Sarah. "But how? We've done everything we could think of." Evelyn paused, mind racing. "Margaret said the source was the director's records. We destroyed them, but something remains. There must be another anchor, a final piece holding this evil in place." As if in response, the wind suddenly intensified, carrying with it a whispered chorus of voices, faint yet chillingly clear. "Return, you must return." Evelyn turned slowly, gazing back toward the hospital. Her heart sank with dread. The building loomed darker, more sinister than before. Shadows stretched outward, beckoning ominously. "It's calling us back." Sarah whispered fearfully, gripping Thomas tightly. "Then we go back," Evelyn declared firmly. "We face it head on. It's the only way." Gathering their remaining courage, they moved toward the hospital entrance again. Each step forward was heavier, weighed down by dread, yet Evelyn pushed relentlessly onward. Inside, the air was thick, suffocating, heavier than ever. Shadows writhed eagerly along the walls, forming distorted, grotesque figures, mocking their return. Evelyn's flashlight beam wavered, flickering as if in fear. A sudden, piercing scream tore through the hallways, reverberating painfully. Evelyn froze momentarily, heart seizing in terror, but quickly steeled herself. "It's trying to scare us away. Don't let it." They navigated through familiar corridors, now twisted and alien, each hallway bending unnaturally. They passed room 306 again, its door swinging slowly open, inviting them inside. "It's here," Evelyn whispered instinctively. "This room, it's the heart of the evil." She stepped inside cautiously, flashlight trembling violently. The room was dark, colder than ever, filled with an overwhelming presence. Thomas and Sarah followed closely, their breathing shallow with fear. "Why have you returned?" a voice hissed, echoing from every corner. "You should have stayed away." Evelyn held her ground. "We're here to end this." "You won't torment anyone else." The darkness swirled angrily, coalescing into a towering, shadowy figure. Its eyes glowed fiercely, malevolent and burning with rage. "You cannot end what is eternal." "Watch us," Evelyn retorted defiantly. She reached into her pocket, pulling out the lighter she'd kept from the director's office. She ignited it, the small flame illuminating the darkness, forcing the shadowy figure back slightly. "It's afraid," Sarah whispered in realization. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice clear, resolute. "This place thrives on suffering and fear, but your power ends here. We refuse to feed you any longer." The shadow roared defiantly, surging forward, enveloping them in darkness. Evelyn felt its icy grip clawing at her soul, draining her strength, whispering despair and hopelessness. But within the darkness, Evelyn remembered Margaret, Jacob, and all the other forgotten souls who had suffered. Their pain ignited something powerful within her, a fierce, unyielding resolve. "We are not afraid!" Evelyn shouted boldly, her voice echoing clearly. "You have no power over us." The shadow howled, struggling desperately against Evelyn's determination. But it was too late. Empowered by their unity, Sarah and Thomas joined Evelyn, their voices rising as one, defiant and strong. "No more fear," they shouted together. Light exploded outward from their joined hands, brilliant and purifying, consuming the darkness, cleansing the room in a wave of intense illumination. The shadow screamed, dissolving violently, its fury silenced forever. As the light faded, the room was quiet, peaceful. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by calm. Evelyn sighed deeply, relief washing over her. "It's over," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. Evelyn nodded, smiling softly. "We did it." They exited St. Anne. Mercy Hospital together, stepping into the gentle dawn light, feeling freedom's sweet embrace. Behind them, the hospital stood silent and still, no longer menacing, now merely a forgotten relic. As they walked away, Evelyn felt the reassuring presence of those they had saved, Margaret, Jacob, and countless others, finally free, whispering gently their gratitude and farewell. Evelyn took a deep breath, ready to embrace the future, knowing their courageous final steps had ended the nightmare forever.